In our headlines on this Wednesday, January 8th, here in South Korea. A second warrant authorizing the arrest of the president for questioning on insurrection charges has been issued, following an earlier failure to detain him last week. Meanwhile, the Korea Development Institute says economic sentiments among households and businesses alike have tumbled tangibly amid the country's political turmoil. Big-name tech companies and their smaller counterparts have made the annual trek to Las Vegas for this year's Consumer Electronics Show to share their innovations for the future. As widely expected, a second warrant authorizing the arrest of President Yoon has been issued. Our Lee Soo-jin reports.
A South Korean court has authorized a second attempt to arrest President Yoon. The Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials has announced that the Seoul Western District Court issued another arrest warrant on Tuesday evening. Both the court and the CIO, however, did not reveal the extension period. While warrants are typically valid for 7 days, as was the case with the initial arrest warrant, a judge may extend the duration if deemed necessary. The issuance of the second arrest warrant comes after it was reapplied for on Monday when the initial warrant expired. The chief of the CIO told lawmakers at the National Assembly on Tuesday that the agency would treat the second attempt as their last chance.
With the determination that the second warrant execution will be the final one, the CIO will do its best and prepare thoroughly and meticulously to ensure the objective is achieved.
He also apologized for the failed first arrest attempt that took place last Friday. The CIO's first attempt to detain President Yoon at his residence in Hannam-dong was met with strong resistance from the Presidential Security Service, ending in a tense standoff that lasted more than 5 hours. With the tightening of security measures at the presidential residence after the first arrest attempt, including the installation of barbed wire and the blocking of entrances with vehicles, the investigation team is likely to increase the number of personnel for the second attempt. Investigators have also warned that they're considering arresting Presidential Security Service personnel as offenders if they attempt to disrupt the second arrest attempt. The CIO will once again lead the warrant execution. It tried on Monday to delegate the enforcing of the warrant to the police, but failed as it is not legally permitted to transfer investigative duties to another agency. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
And news of a second, potentially more forceful attempt to arrest the president has gathered huge crowds of his followers to his official residential area. For more on this, I have our An Sung-jin standing by live on site. Sung-jin, along with those standing in support of the president, I believe there are also those demanding his detainment. What have you been seeing and hearing there?
Sunny, I've been standing here nearby the presidential residence for the past couple of hours, and I have to speak up a little bit more compared to my normal voice due to the sounds that are coming from nearby protests, especially right from behind me. I say that the protest situation was relatively tame yesterday, but following the second arrest warrant issued, things have been stoked up again. What's surprising though, Sunny, is that the weather is below zero at the moment, yet people have been camping out here overnight. Protests from both sides are taking place here at the moment as we speak, with thousands gathered. Conservative groups, including the Freedom Union, have gathered here to show support for President Yoon, waving Korean and American flags. They've been shouting things like, "Let's save Korea" and "Arrest Lee Jae-myung," the main opposition leader.
Does this make sense that they are arresting Yoon Suk-yeol? He is not an individual but a president of the country. Our country is in anarchy.
But also people who've been pushing for Yoon's immediate arrest, including the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions, have also been waving placards and shouting for the CIO's prompt execution of the arrest warrant.
Regardless of one's political preferences, declaring martial law itself is wrong. I've been coming out here day and night, so I hope this is over so I can get some sleep.
Right, and Sung-jin, how is the police seeking to maintain peace among the two factions of public protesters there?
Right, Sunny, I'd say it's generally been peaceful out here, but I wouldn't say there haven't been any clashes at all. From small and large bickering to quarrels to physical clashes with the police and the conservative groups, things have been slightly agitated out here in the streets. The police have set up barricades to prevent the two sides from getting into fights. The Seoul Metropolitan government has asked the police to ensure that there is minimal disruption. The police have also placed more personnel, rerouted city buses, and provided live traffic information. Protests for and against the president's arrest are expected to continue throughout the day, both nearby the presidential residence and near the Constitutional Court. That's all I have for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Sung-jin, thank you for braving the call to bring us that report. That was our An Sung-jin reporting live from the president's neighborhood of Hannam-dong. Now, at the National Assembly this afternoon, two bills aimed at initiating special probes into allegations against President Yoon Suk-yeol and First Lady Kim Gon-hee have failed to pass the latest parliamentary vote. Out of the 300 lawmakers, 198 voted in favor of the prosecution bill against the president, while 101 voted against it and 1 abstained. Meanwhile, with regard to the bill targeting the First Lady, 196 voted in favor, 103 voted against, and 1 vote was deemed invalid. The opposition-led bill sought to investigate insurrection charges against the president for his brief imposition of martial law and alleged stock manipulation by his wife. The bills were rejected by acting President Choi Sang-mok last week and returned to the National Assembly for a revote. In other news, transport authorities here say a bird strike did indeed occur prior to the fatal crash of the Boeing plane operated by Jeju Air on December 29th. Our Lee Seung-jae has details.
The Ministry of Land Infrastructure and Transport announced on Tuesday that the Jeju Air passenger plane that crashed at Muan International Airport initially suffered a bird strike. Based on the pilot's Mayday distress call and testimony from the surviving crew members, a bird strike was pointed out as the initial cause of the accident, making it the first time the government has confirmed a cause. Lee Seung-yeol, the head of the accident investigation team of the Aviation and Railway Accident Investigation Board, confirmed the bird strike during a briefing, adding that it's clear at least one of the engines was struck by a bird. He added that an investigation is still ongoing to see if both engines were affected. Given the presence of feathers in one engine, Lee said investigators reached that conclusion due to the presence of feathers in one engine, but added that such an incident does not mean an engine will immediately shut down. Amid controversy that the location of a concrete mound holding localizers at the end of the runway exacerbated the deadly result of the crash, the Transport Ministry says it was built and installed following regulations. The ministry also cited International Civil Aviation Organization and the Federal Aviation Administration regulations and pointed out that there was nothing wrong with the concrete mound, which is the base facility of the localizer. However, Transport Minister Park Sang-woo said authorities are well aware of the concerns and will swiftly improve the structures at airports in the interest of safety. The Transport Minister also announced that the government has excluded former and current senior officials from taking part in the investigation to avoid conflicts of interest and ensure a fair and objective probe. Park said that Chang Man-hee, the chairman of the Aviation and Railway Accident Investigation Board and a former Transport Ministry official, as well as Chu Jong-won, the head of the ministry's Aviation Policy Office, have been excluded from all board activities. The Transport Minister also offered his resignation over the Jeju Air tragedy. Meanwhile, the damaged flight data recorder has been transferred to the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board in Washington, D.C. Data extraction will take 3 days, but experts said it may take several months to fully analyze it by matching the data with the cockpit voice recorder. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The United Nations Security Council is poised to convene on Wednesday in New York to address North Korea's latest launch of a ballistic missile. The planned meeting comes after a request by 6 countries, namely South Korea, the US, the UK, Denmark, France and Slovenia. Earlier on Monday, North Korea test-fired an intermediate-range ballistic missile toward waters of its east coast. The following day, the regime claimed it had successfully tested a ballistic missile tipped with a hypersonic warhead. South Korea, for its part, has cast doubt on this claim. A state-run think tank has shed concerning light on the broader impact of Korea's political unrest on its economic sentiment among households and businesses alike. Our Choi Min-jung explains.
The South Korean economy is experiencing mounting downward pressure amid domestic political uncertainty. The Korea Development Institute said in a report Wednesday that South Korea's economic sentiments have dropped significantly due to the recent political unrest following President Yoon's short-lived martial law declaration on December 3rd. Household and corporate sentiment indices have fallen further than during President Park Geun-hye's impeachment in 2016. The Composite Consumer Sentiment Index declined by 9.4 points over 3 months in 2016, whereas it dropped by 12.3 points in just 1 month during the recent turmoil. The recent Business Survey Index also fell comparatively sharper than during Park's impeachment. As figure suggests, an expert says the current situation is much more uncertain than it was during the Park Geun-hye impeachment proceedings.
Currently, many of the problems that Korea is facing concerning the impeachment is outside the Constitution or somewhere where it's not really very well defined by the Constitution. So in some sense, we are in a very uncertain ground that is basically increased not only political but economic uncertainty.
The KDI also noted that economic recovery is being delayed by slowing production growth. The construction sector has continued to struggle with weak performance, while industrial production in mining and manufacturing receded in recent months, despite high growth in semiconductors due to declines in automobile production. Despite the recent political turmoil, however, financial market indicators such as exchange rates and stock prices have remained relatively stable. Experts also expect some recovery in economic sentiment, but believe it'll be harder the longer the current political turmoil lasts. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
January 27th of this year will be a public holiday. Now, this comes as part of efforts to encourage private spending by creating a 6-day Lunar New Year holiday this year, starting from the weekend prior to the Monday of January 27th, all the way to the 30th, that is Thursday. The decision was reached during talks between government officials and ruling party lawmakers at the Parliament, where they addressed ways to ensure economic stability amid dwindling domestic demand and the rising risk of Trump tariffs. With regard to the latter, acting President Choi Sang-mok has pledged weekly pan-ministry discussions to coordinate productive response measures. Meanwhile, interim chairman of the People Power Party, Kwon Young-se, spoke of efforts to work on legislation in support of the local economy. And on the corporate front, both Samsung Electronics and LG Electronics expect a substantial drop in operating profits for the final quarter of 2024 amid soaring expenses but slowing demand. Our Ian Jin reports.
Samsung Electronics reported Wednesday that the company's estimated operating profits for the October to December period came to 6.5 trillion won, which is around $4.5 billion. That's a decline of nearly 30% compared to the previous quarter. The chipmaker said this was due to lower global demand for PCs and mobile phones, as well as higher R&D costs. Revenue for the fourth quarter rose 10.7% to 75 trillion won, or $51.6 billion on year. For 2024, the annual operating profit came to 32.73 trillion won, or around $22.5 billion, up nearly 400% from the previous year. Meanwhile, LG Electronics also reported on Wednesday that the company's estimated operating profits for the fourth quarter came to 3.43 trillion won, or $2.4 billion, down 6.1% compared to the year before. The company said its sluggish earnings were due to global economic uncertainties. However, the country's leading home appliance maker recorded 87.74 trillion won, or $60.33 billion in annual revenue for 2024, marking a new record for the highest annual revenue in the company's history. Both companies plan to release their final earnings results later this month. Yoon Jin, Arirang News.
The Consumer Electronics Show is said to be the world's largest tech show, during which big-name companies and their smaller counterparts head to Las Vegas in January to share their innovative approaches to life in the foreseeable future. For more on those innovations, our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun files this report.
The wait is finally over. CES, the first big annual tech event of 2025, officially kicked off today and is expected to draw hundreds of thousands of people. With the event due to run until Friday local time, more than 4,500 exhibitors have gathered to showcase and set the tone for this year's tech innovations under this year's theme, Connect, Solve, Discover, Dive In. It explores how new technologies can connect humanity and contribute to solving global issues, thoroughly explored over the past 2 days prior to the event through press conferences and keynote speeches. From the Consumer Technology Association's Tech Trends report to NVIDIA's Jensen Huang returning to CES for the first time in 8 years, the prevalence of AI is clear through much of the tech on display. This could mean a number of things for South Korea's tech giants. Huang revealed to the press that he plans to meet with SK Group's chairman Chae Tae-won, with SK hynix being NVIDIA's biggest supplier of HBM chips. He also went on to emphasize Samsung's potential in supplying HBM chips to NVIDIA, stating that the firm will eventually succeed, no question. That being said, this event has gone from being called the Consumer Electronics Show to being branded just CES, with the president of the CTA saying this reflects how the event has come to be something of a consumer everything show instead. For this year's CES, the CTA laid out some particular areas of interest this year, such as digital coexistence, human security, community, and longevity. New programs this year also put a spotlight on 3 tech categories: mobility, quantum computing, and energy transition. Quantum computing was described as the next big development to come by the CTA. If the 2020s is the intelligence decade, then the 2030s will likely be the quantum era. There are exciting developments for mobility too, particularly as connectivity and sustainability become increasingly important, and the same applies to energy transition. Another highlight of CES is the Innovation Awards program that honors what are deemed outstanding innovations in design and engineering. And there are some new categories added this year, such as fashion tech and pet tech. Fashion tech is usually associated with smartwatches and fitness gear, but the CEO of Myant, this year's Best of Innovation honoree for fashion tech with its revolutionary textiles and clothing that integrates AI to monitor health conditions across the entire life cycle, says that it's more than something gimmicky.
It's going to go to a very serious level of relationship between humans, all humans, and fitness and health, all of them in one, because we're all wearing textile all the time.
And with an increasingly large market for pet products, pet tech is another fast-growing sector. This year's Best of Innovation honoree in pet tech, Pawport, aims to address what pet owners want for their pets, such as comfort and safety for both.
Pets are a big part of everybody's family. Everybody loves their pets. We've got all this tech for our kids and everyone else, but people are trying to bring convenience and safety and fun into the pet space, which is important for a lot of people.
As CES 2025 unfolds, it's clear that this year's event is more than just a showcase of cutting-edge technology, but a glimpse into how innovation is shaping the way we live, work, and connect with the world around us. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News, Las Vegas.
It's been roughly 2 weeks since the release of Squid Game Season 2 on Netflix, and its merchandising strategy appears to be garnering just as much attention. Our Park Gun-woo shows us how.
The global hit TV show Squid Game has returned for its 2nd season. And the show continues to top Netflix's global top 10 TV shows chart as of Wednesday, in the 2nd week since its release on December 26. It exceeded 126 million viewers, calculated by dividing total viewing time by the show's total runtime, in just 11 days, making it the 2nd most watched non-English TV show on Netflix. Along with the show's popularity, the retail industry has leveraged it by creating fun experiential spaces.
This Squid Game pop-up store makes you feel like you stepped right into a scene from the show. Now I'm about to participate in the game. And if I can just grab these 5 Kongi stones, I'll be one step closer to the grand prize worth over $31 million. Maybe next time.
Since the first season of Squid Game, Korean traditional games featured in the show have gained global popularity. Accordingly, the store attracted visitors with the opportunity to try newly introduced games from the second season, including Konginori or Jackstones, with locals and international visitors joining long lines to participate.
Quite a big fan. I watched the second season really quickly, and I came because I wanted to experience the games. I hope I won't have shaky hands for this one because it looks very challenging, but I'm excited.
Products with Squid Game tie-ins, including beverages and snacks, sold at one of the major local convenience store franchises across the country, are also proving popular. And a pop-up store with all of these products has been attracting visitors, including people from abroad.
Oh, I happen to be visiting Korea, so I know this store has a pop-up, so I'm very interested to come and see.
According to an official, daily sales of these products have reached $68,000 since the release of Squid Game 2, a surge of around 60% compared to pre-release sales. He expects the trend to continue until the release of Season 3 later this year. Park Gun-woo, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. We begin in the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump has stated that he will not rule out the use of military or economic measures in pursuing control over the Panama Canal and Greenland. Speaking at a press conference at his Florida resort on Tuesday local time, Trump responded to questions on the matter by saying that the U.S. needed Greenland for national security reasons. When asked if he would guarantee refraining from the use of force, he said he couldn't commit to that. He further remarked that tariffs might be imposed on Denmark if it rejects the proposal to acquire Greenland. This statement comes shortly after his son Donald Trump Jr. arrived in Greenland. In response, Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen said Greenland's future will be decided by Greenland, reiterating that the autonomous Danish territory is not for sale. Next, we turn to Tibet, where a devastating earthquake has killed at least 126 people. According to China's state-run Xinhua News Agency, a magnitude 7.1 earthquake hit Dingri County near the Nepal border in western China on Tuesday morning local time. The quake also left 188 injured and destroyed over 3,000 homes. Officials warned that the casualty count could rise as search and rescue efforts continue. Earlier reports from Xinhua noted that approximately 6,900 residents live within a 20-kilometer radius of the quake's epicenter. China Central Television reported that rescue teams successfully evacuated 407 isolated residents and set up 14 temporary shelters to accommodate more than 34,000 displaced individuals.
Time to get back to our
Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg announced on Tuesday that the company would be discontinuing its fact-checking program, saying a community-based system will take its place. Zuckerberg also revealed changes to content moderation policies, particularly regarding politically sensitive topics. The company is modifying or reversing policies that reduce the amount of political content on users' feeds. The adjustments will apply across Meta's major platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Zuckerberg also further criticized governments and traditional media for increasingly pressuring platforms to enforce censorship. He emphasized that Meta will streamline its policies to prioritize free expression on its platforms. Yoon Se-young, Arirang News.
The extreme cold spell is getting stronger. Tomorrow morning, the temperature in Seoul will plummet to -12 degrees Celsius. As this cold wave is expected to reach its peak, the first cold wave warning of this winter has also been issued in Seoul. Please be prepared for the cold so that you don't get sick. Currently, heavy snow advisories are in place in southern parts of Chungcheongnam-do province and northern parts of Jeollabuk-do province. These areas have already received about 10 centimeters of heavy snow, but up to 30 centimeters of more snow is expected in Jeollabuk-do province and the mountainous areas of Jeju Island until Friday. Tomorrow, Chuncheon will start off at -15 degrees, Daejeon -11 degrees. Highs will move up to -7 in Seoul and Chuncheon, -5 degrees in Daejeon. This snow and rain will continue until Friday in the Jeollado provinces and Sunday on Jeju Island. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world. Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. Thank you for watching.
How to survive in Korea. Barbecue restaurants. Step 1. Taking care of your clothes. Put your jacket in the plastic bag. Seal it tight. If the stool flips open, store your clothes inside. Wearing light colors, grab an apron. It's the best defense against oil splatter and smoke. Step 2. Bottomless side dishes. Basic side dishes at a barbecue restaurant. Eat, and eat as much as you want. Side dishes come with free refills. Oh, and if you don't see this sign, just ask, 사장님, 여기 밑반찬 좀 더 주세요. Simple, isn't it? Step 3. Grilling meat. There are various kinds of samgyeopsal in Korea. Place the meat on the grill. Turn it over when golden. And again when it looks done. Again and again and again. Step 4. Sam style. You aren't taking bites of sam like a taco, are you? In Korea, we have it in one bite. A pro tip here. Add only as much as you can handle in a bite. Gotta avoid awkward situations. Step 5. Enjoy the perks. After the meal, enjoy the perks offered as a Korean restaurant. Fabric refreshers get rid of the barbecue smell, while mint candies freshen your breath. Did you survive the barbecue restaurant? Hang on. Are you here with someone you want to impress? Then let's skip the garlic. Who knows what will happen?
It's go time.
Presiding over Monday's cabinet meeting following his latest diplomatic agenda in New York, President Yoon
South Korea's economy will grow.
The central bank has kept its key interest rate unchanged. Mission complete for Russian duty selfish. Seoul is rallying in hopes of bringing the world expo 2030.
아리랑. 고무장갑 다 똑같다고? 아니, 러버랩은 달라. 내 손인 듯 하루 종일 편하게. 슬림한 두께로 낀 듯 안 낀 듯 가볍게. 튼튼하니까 걱정 없이. 두 가지 길이로 다양하게 쓰는 러버랩으로 만드는 편리한 일상. 껴보면 달라. 러버랩 고무장갑. 러버랩.
Curtains have gone up for this year's Consumer Electronics Show over in Las Vegas, where big-name companies and their smaller counterparts have on display their innovative takes to ensure a better life in the foreseeable future. On Press Perspective today, we touch upon this trade show against the backdrop of tariff threats and other economic headwinds for South Korea. Do stay with us. Hello, you're watching Press Perspective for this Wednesday, January 8th here in Seoul. I'm Min Sun-hee. Today we start with the latest from this year's Consumer Electronics Show in the US before moving to broader economic matters for South Korea. For more on this, I have Lee Ji-hoon with international news agency Reuters here in the studio. Ji-hoon, it's great to have you back and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I also have Professor Yang Jun-seok at the Catholic University of Korea with us. Professor Yang, as always, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Happy to be here and Happy New Year.
Right, Professor, Happy New Year. We'll start here in the studio, Ji-hoon. This year's Consumer Electronics Show is underway in Las Vegas as we speak. What more can you tell us about the event, including, of course, the interest that Korean companies have been generating among the foreign media?
Yep. Consumer Electronics Show, or CES, is an annual event where major companies from around the world gather in Las Vegas for a week to showcase their newest technologies. This year, however, the event is being held just 2 weeks prior to the next U.S. administration, which is bringing up an unusual issue of tariff at the technology event. As you know, Trump has pledged to impose tariffs on imports from major trading partners such as Canada, Mexico, and China. And he has also floated the idea of introducing a blanket tariff of 10 to 20% on all imports shipped to the United States. Because of that, tariff is being discussed a lot at CES this year, according to our reports, and other policy-related issues like subsidies and supply chain are also being brought up by major tech and auto companies. One example is Japan's Honda, which said that the policy uncertainty is making it cautious about electric vehicle production, and it will be cautious about manufacturing batteries in Canada. Other than that, analysts say interest is high in technologies related to artificial intelligence, of course, which has been a major driver of global stock markets in recent years, including South Korea. Earlier this week, NVIDIA shares in the United States hit a record high, and in South Korea, chip makers like Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, they also rose sharply on hopes around new AI technologies. One of major events at CES event one of the major events at CES this year was NVIDIA CEO's keynote speech on Monday, where he talked about artificial intelligence technologies for training robots and self-driving cars. He unveiled what he called Cosmos Foundation models, which is generating video for AI training for cars and robots, and new gaming chips as well, which are expected to help with NVIDIA's sales in the short term. And stock market is showing immediate reaction to NVIDIA's comments. In the United States, Micron Technology shares rose nearly 3% overnight because NVIDIA said Micron was providing memory chips for AI, NVIDIA's gaming chipsets. And in South Korea, Samsung Electronics shares, they also rose more than 3% today because NVIDIA said Samsung was close to passing NVIDIA's quality tests. When it comes to South Korean companies, a record high of more than 900 companies are participating in this year's CES events, including major conglomerates like Samsung, Hyundai, LG, and SK, according to the industry ministry.
Right. Professor Young, as Yoon has just mentioned, a record number of Korean companies are indeed taking part in the CES of 2025. That being said, what measures, Professor Young, do you propose for the government and local businesses in the global IT market as we prepare for greater tariffs amid the return of the Trump administration, as Yoon mentioned earlier on?
Okay, well, let's start with the tariffs first. President Trump has threatened that he would impose 10 to 20% tariffs on all imports to the United States and 60% on imports from China. Now, higher tariffs will affect Korean exports, if nothing else, because the prices for U.S. consumers will go up. So it will have a negative shock for Korean exports, including exports of electronics. But perhaps it will not be as bad as some analysts fear right now because all the countries are getting hit with the same tariffs. And for China, which is in some ways Korea's biggest competitors in electronics, they will be getting hit with higher tariffs. So it will not be a good event for Korea, but its negative effect may be hopefully less than feared. But ideally, we shouldn't have increased tariffs in the first place. So I think that's where the government and the Korean companies should aim at. Try to form partnerships with U.S. retailers, U.S. companies which use Korean intermediate parts, and U.S. consumers to show the Trump administration that the tariffs will not be good for not be good for the U.S. consumers. It will not be good for U.S. companies. It will add to U.S. inflation. So basically, that's what the government can do for the moment. And the private companies who also invest in the United States, who export to the United States, can form partnerships with the Korean government and the U.S. retailers, U.S. consumers as well to try to get this point across. And then what the companies can do, well, they can continually innovate, try to come up with items that consumers want. And Samsung, as well as other Korean electronics companies like LG, they've been very good at innovating new consumer products that people like. But sometimes the government, because of heavy regulations or restrictions, cannot really support them in developing these new products. So Korean government should emphasize deregulation, regulatory reform so that the Korean companies can get these innovative products to the market as quickly as possible.
Right, quite a number of innovative products are being shared by Samsung Electronics and LG Electronics at the Consumer Electronics Show ongoing in Las Vegas as we speak. Ji-hoon, beyond that though, what would you say here on the domestic front has been perhaps the impact of the arrest warrant issued for President Yoon on the country's foreign exchange as well as stock markets?
Yeah, last year, South Korea's won currency weakened near 13% against the dollar, which was the biggest annual drop since 2008. And it was also the biggest drop among major Asian currencies. In December, the dollar-won rate hit its highest level in more than 15 years, rising over 1480. As political uncertainty heightened after the president's impeachment following his martial law attempt. This week, the dollar-won rate is trading a little bit lower at around 1450, but finance minister today said it was still too early to be relieved. And many analysts are saying there is a possibility of the dollar-won rate rising above 1500 sometime this year because of political uncertainty remaining high with the ongoing impeachment process and arrest attempts undermining global credibility in South Korea's economy and financial markets. In the stock market, the Kospi fell nearly 10% last year, which was also the worst among Asian peers, compared with Japan's near 20% gain, Taiwan's near 30% gain, and China's more than 10% gains. Analysts are saying recent political uncertainty proves Korea discount, which is a term often used to refer to the Kospi's undervaluation, and that it is adding to downward pressure on the stock market. In response to all of this, top financial officials from the finance ministry, central bank, and regulatory agencies, they are holding meetings every week to assess market conditions and review countermeasures. Finance Minister Choi Sang-mok, who is now serving as acting president, said he will continue to hold the so-called F4 meeting every week until financial markets stabilize, even as the acting president.
Right, indeed. Professor Yang, what has been the impact of government efforts to stabilize the foreign exchange market on Korea's foreign exchange reserves?
Okay, well, Korea's foreign exchange reserves at the end of December last year was $415.6 billion US dollars. A lot of people, including myself, have been worried that continually depreciating Korean won, and especially during December when we had quite rapid changes in a very limited period of time. We had 2 or 3 days when won changed more than 8 won per day. It involved a lot of intervention by the Bank of Korea. So we were concerned that perhaps the foreign exchange reserves fell down by a lot. But the December figures show that it actually went up slightly. It went up by 210 million US dollars. And reportedly, the Bank of Korea spent less on defending the Korean won than it expected. So in turn, that is good news. Korean foreign exchange reserves is reportedly still the 9th largest in the world, and it's generally considered a very healthy amount. It's deemed generally sufficient for maintaining Korea's economic stability. But because Korean won had been depreciating so much in the last year, that if we look at the long-term trend, the foreign reserves are declining. It's been shrinking since 2019, and if you look at just the last year, then we had a high of last year in September with 420 billion US dollars, and it shrunk about $4.5 billion since September, and that probably has been used for defending the Korean won from depreciating further. And some of the analysts are concerned that the reason that the Korean foreign reserves have not been falling that much is that Korea has been doing a lot to increase the US dollar holdings, especially by Korean financial institutions. The Bank of Korea, as well as the government, has loosened up some of the foreign exchange related regulations, such as regulations on holding currency futures and regulations on deposits by domestic Korean agencies, dollar deposits. So if you look at the subcategories while the securities holdings of Bank of Korea has fallen, the deposits made by domestic financial institutions that are held by Bank of Korea went up, and that's where the increase in the foreign reserves came from. So generally, we're in a safe place, but some of it may be due to these recent changes in regulation, deregulation, and regulatory loosening. And some of the reasons why the regulations were placed in the first place was that we didn't want the foreign U.S. dollar holdings to be short-term oriented, and so it's this type of loosening of regulation is appropriate right now. But once this current urgent situation reduces a bit, perhaps we should be looking at re-regulating some of these regulations that have been loosened up in the last couple of months.
I see. So a shift in policy following that then. Jun, staying with government efforts to stabilize the broader economy, I believe a policy to spur foreign inflows has been shared. Could you tell us a bit about it?
Yeah. When the government announced biennial economic plans last week, its main focus was on stabilizing financial markets, especially the foreign exchange market. For example, the finance minister said it will widen the role of foreign banks in the foreign exchange market by allowing different kinds of foreign exchange transactions for them, such as settlements of export and import transactions. The ministry says they will boost liquidity in the foreign exchange market, as foreign banks were previously allowed to conduct transactions only for financial investment purposes, such as bond and stock trading. The ministry also said it will allow South Korean companies to borrow money overseas and bring the money back home to spend on facility investment, which is a big change for South Korea because it used to be controlling overseas debt very strictly due to trauma from capital flight during the past financial crisis. The minister says it was possible because South Korea turned a net creditor in 2014, and now it holds foreign exchange reserves of the 9th largest amount in the world, which is allowing room for policymakers to loosen restrictions, as Professor Yang said. The government also announced various measures related to financial markets, such as expanding foreign exchange swap program between the central bank and the pension fund, and making it easier for foreigners to access the local bond market. All of these measures are aimed at boosting liquidity in the foreign exchange market and make it more stable, with more demand to exchange the dollars for the won, which should help the dollar-won rate stabilize in the long run.
Right, hopefully fingers crossed then. Speaking within your capacity as a scholar, Professor Yang, what more can you tell us with regard to the practicality of this proposed policy by the government?
Okay, I think the policies that were mentioned can fall into two categories. One is to increase dollar holdings at the current time. And as I mentioned in the last question, perhaps some of those measures should be temporary. We do feel it is desirable right now, but in the long term, it may increase volatility in the currency market. So those should be considered very carefully. Another set of measures that was promised to WGIB, the World Government Bond Index, when Korea tried to join the WGBI index. Korea did join, but they did delay the implementation because the WGBI was waiting for some of these measures to go through. Some of the measures considered here include measures to make the trading hours for government bonds for foreign investors longer. It also includes measures like allowing registered foreign financial institutions to engage in current transactions like settlements of exports and imports, and which would increase competition in the domestic financial market. So these are desirable and they should certainly go ahead. But the question is, are these measures enough to bring in investment in the short term, and I have a bit of doubt about that. The investments come in because it is profitable for the investors, and right now, because there's so many bad news, so much political turmoil, that I'm not sure if the domestic Korean investments are desirable enough to foreign investors. But these measures will definitely help in the medium to long run. I'm just not sure whether, given all the situation that we have, including the especially political turmoil, that it's enough to attract that much short-term capital right now.
Right, I see. Professor Yang, what is your outlook with regard to consumer prices here in South Korea then in the new year?
Okay, well, consumer prices for December 2024, if you look at it in 12-month range, the headline inflation came up to 1.9, which is very close to Bank of Korea's goal. And the coal inflation, again, over 12 months was 1.8%, again, very close to Bank of Korea's goal. And it's been generally on a declining trend. So we can say that perhaps the inflation has stabilized. If you look at the monthly numbers, well, the headline inflation was fairly high over just month of December, 0.4%, but that was due to temporary rise in oil prices and vegetable prices, so that should not be too serious for macroeconomics. The core inflation, which strips away the food prices and oil prices, energy prices, that only came up to 0.1, which is stable enough. But what is a bit concerning is if you look at the prices for manufactured goods, it only went up by 1.4% in December. It only went up by 0.6% in the month of November, and that's substantially below the goals set by the Bank of Korea. It may show that the economy is slowing down, especially for the manufacturing sector. So that is concerning. It could signal that Korea is already in a fairly serious slowdown, but we'll have to look at the January numbers to make sure.
Right, I see. So we'll have to wait for the numbers this month to see for sure whether our economy is slowing down then. Yoon, aside from tariffs, we talked about that earlier, what other issues look to dominate the economic agenda of 2025?
Domestically, the main focus will be on economic sentiment for both consumers and businesses, as they weakened sharply after the martial law attempt last month. The consumer sentiment is at the lowest since late 2022 when it was hit by the Itaewon crowd crush. And the business sentiment is at the lowest since since 2020 when it was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Last week, the government said we prepare measures to boost consumer demand with tax cuts for household spending and car purchases. Well, it also promised support measures for small and medium-sized firms with tax cuts for facility investment. And another domestic issue is supplementary government budget, as the Parliament last month cut the government's budget spending for this year from the government's proposal. That is raising expectations among economists that the government will draft an extra budget as early as in the first quarter to boost domestic demand. The government says it is not planning on drafting an extra budget for now, but there are growing calls especially among lawmakers, that the government should prepare it as soon as possible. So we'll have to see how it develops.
Right, and speaking about waiting to see, what are some economy-related issues to keep an eye on this month?
Next week, the Bank of Korea will hold its first monetary policy meeting for this year. After lowering interest rates for two consecutive meetings last year from 3.5% to 3%. The Bank of Korea governor said earlier this month that the central bank will lower interest rates more this year, but that it will be flexible due to a trade-off among policy variables such as growth, inflation, and financial stability. Many analysts also say the Bank of Korea is in a tough situation because when it comes to economic growth, there is growing downward pressure, but then the BOK will also have to be cautious about high dollar-won exchange rate because they could reignite inflation pressure through input prices. So next week, we'll have to see how the Bank of Korea balances between these two conflicting variables of slowing growth and high exchange rate.
Right, for sure. So we'll wait for next week to see if it gives us a better idea of where the economy is headed. All right, Yoon, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts.
Thank you very much.
And Professor Yang, as always, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, well, that is all for this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching.